Imagine waking up in a world where no one has been born for 25 years. No babies crying, no teenagers arguing, no parents exhaustedly scrolling through parenting blogs at 3 in the morning. Just a planet slowly shuffling toward extinction, still paying taxes and pretending the weekend matters. That's the world of The Children of Men, P.D. James's strangely polite apocalypse, where civilization has lost not only its fertility, but its purpose. And unlike the cinematic chaos of the 2006 film, James's version of the end times is eerily quiet. People still go to work, the lawns are still mowed, and the government sends Christmas cards while euthanizing the elderly. It's less Mad Max, more Radio 4 with a body count. James, better known for genteel murders and melancholy detectives, wrote this in 1992, at the age when most authors are retiring to the countryside to shout at editors. Instead, she turned her forensic mind from corpses to civilization itself and asked, what happens when the human race just stops reproducing? Her answer isn't an explosion of sci-fi spectacle, but a slow, suffocating decline. Humanity doesn't go out with a bang. It just sighs, tidies up, and waits for the end. It's all so British that even the apocalypse arrives by appointment. The story follows Theo Faron, a history professor with the emotional range of a damp scone who trudges through a sterile England ruled by his cousin Xan Lyppiatt, the self-appointed Warden of England. Xan runs the country like a fascist holiday camp. No crime, no rebellion, plenty of jazz. The population, largely elderly and resigned, spends its time attending quietus ceremonies where the old and unwanted are gently drowned for the good of society. It's euthanasia as civic duty, with refreshments provided. Theo, like everyone else, has given up on anything resembling hope until he's reluctantly pulled into a small resistance group led by Julian, a woman whose quiet faith makes his cynicism look rather juvenile. Infertility in this book isn't just biological, it's moral, spiritual, and intellectual. James turns barrenness into a metaphor for modern life, sterile, self-absorbed, and governed by bureaucrats who talk about efficiency while the species withers. The novel's true horror isn't that no one can have children, but that no one really cares anymore. The world has accepted its extinction with the same resigned politeness as queuing for bad coffee. James clearly saw in the early 90s what many of us are still pretending not to notice. A culture running on autopilot, mistaking distraction for meaning and comfort for happiness. Underneath all this grimness, though, there's a sharp moral core. PD. James was never subtle about her faith, but she wasn't preachy either. Instead, she writes with tone of someone politely insisting that the soul exists, even if everyone else at the dinner party would rather discuss the wine. Theo's gradual rediscovery of compassion, through guilt, rebellion, and the faint possibility of new life, feels both intimate and cosmic. The novel starts as a eulogy for humanity and ends as a faint prayer that maybe, just maybe, the human spirit is too stubborn to die. Stylistically, it's an odd and beautiful thing. James alternates between Theo's dry, academic diary entries and third-person narration that feels like an autopsy of the human condition. The language is exacting, sometimes austere, but laced with melancholy wit. She describes the end of the world as if writing a case report, factual, restrained, and quietly devastating. There's almost no melodrama. When violence happens, it's brief and shocking, like a sudden gust in a dead room. And yet the restraint makes it all the more disturbing. You can feel the silence pressing in. The imagery stays with you. Churches turned into museums for christenings that will never happen. Dolls treated as sacred relics. Cats and dogs doted on like surrogate children. The government banning sperm donation on moral grounds because, even at the end of the world, Britain must maintain standards. Every detail feels plausible, which is precisely why it's terrifying. The apocalypse in James's hands is not a collapse, but a bureaucracy. And then there's the ending. Redemptive, but unsettling. Without spoiling too much, James doesn't hand the reader hope on a silver platter. She offers something murkier, faith without proof, renewal without guarantee. It's both bleak and oddly comforting, like a candle still burning in an empty church. The world may be ending, but as long as someone is willing to believe in tomorrow, it's not quite over. If the novel is a philosophical lament, Alfonso Cuarón's 2006 film adaptation is an adrenaline shot. Gone is the theological subtext. In comes urban warfare, refugees, and an urgent political edge. The film trades James's quiet apocalypse for one that screams. Yet in doing so, it captures something she might have admired, the raw panic of a world that realizes too late what it's lost. The book asks you to think. The film grabs you by the collar and throws you into the smoke. Together, they form a fascinating conversation between despair and resistance. Critics at the time didn't quite know what to do with the book. Some admired its audacity. Others thought James had wandered too far from her detective roots. But over the decades, The Children of Men has only grown in stature. It's now seen as a cornerstone of modern dystopian fiction. Less because of its premise, and more because of its moral weight. James didn't invent the idea of human extinction, but she gave it a conscience. In the end, what makes The Children of Men so powerful isn't its dystopian setup, but its refusal to give in to despair. James writes as if she's gently shaking humanity by the shoulders, asking it to wake up before the last alarm clock stops ticking. It's grimly funny, quietly furious, and in its final moments, deeply moving. The book reminds us that hope isn't a feeling, it's an act of defiance. And in a world as tired and self-absorbed as ours, that might be the most radical thing left.